Now, artists have raised concerns regarding the alleged ongoing corruption and maladministration of funds by officials. They've embarked on a sit-in at the offices of the National Arts Council for over 10 days. Now, the move is prompted by what the creatives term a lack of transparency in the allocation of 300 million rand set aside from the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program. The funds were set aside for the artists in efforts to assist them during the COVID-19 pandemic, when gatherings as well as live performances had been put to a halt. Now, joining us this evening is the sports. Well, joining us this evening, we've got Tebogo Sitatu and Newzroom Afrika, as well as Sipho Sithole. We'll be talking to them about these dynamics. But before that, let's listen in to the Minister of Arts and Culture.
We have seen that people feel angry, shortchanged and undermined. We understand that. We feel the hurt and empathize with the sector and the broader creatives in the country. And we are sorry artists have to go through such an unbearable situation. And we hope that a solution would be found, as we will later perhaps just share views on what the situation is and what could be done.
Now, joining us as we get into this conversation, let's start and introduce you first, Dr. Sipho Sithole from the National Arts Council. Thank you for making the time to be here, as well as Newzroom Afrika and Tebogo Sitatu, who are artists and activists within the artist industry and space. So let's start with you, Sipho. What is the current situation? We know that the Department of Arts and Culture had put in place, or at least Treasury had put in place, large sums of money, 300 million rand from the President's Employment Stimulus Package, and this was supposed to go to artists in South Africa. We know that COVID-19 had shut down many industries, and one of the industries that really has suffered the most is the entertainment industry. So perhaps put this into perspective for us, where the National Arts Council comes in. What was the mandate given to you by the Minister?
First, let me say, I also want to echo the sentiments of the Minister about how dire the situation is and how hard-hitting it is to the creatives. Because as you know, the arts practitioners, most of them don't have an 8-to-5 job. They are in the gig economy. They rely on calls there and then, and if there is no call, whether for a gig or an assignment, there is just no work. And however, you know, what is said is that the cultural and creative industries in this country contributes 94.3 billion rands to the gross domestic product annually, which is 1.7% of total contribution. This sector employs 1.3 million people, it's about 7% of total employment, and it's growing at about 2.4% annually. But it is the most undermined sector. It is the most undermined sector in terms of the level of funding, and people think that it's just a pure entertainment. They don't realize that this industry actually creates jobs, it feeds families, and it has created people who have property and assets just from the work that they are doing. I mean, you are sitting here as a broadcaster. It is the cultural and creative industry. It's part of the seven domains. But the level of funding is just not sufficient. It is true. Well, first let me put it this way. There is no corruption that we know of as the National Arts Council, the new council that has come in since January. What we know of is the misallocation, the mismanagement, and what we might even call the maladministration of these 300 million rands that the President had given to us.
Help me understand how misallocation and all the misses that you've mentioned now, how that does not amount to corruption. What then is your definition of corruption?
Yes, because we have not seen whether it has benefited, it was done to benefit specific individuals. What they did is that, remember, we only came on board in January. This process was completed by end of December, by the 30th of December, what we are told, that was the last sitting of the panels that were appointed from the industry. It was the last sitting of the previous EXCO of council that looked, adjudicated and approved all the 1,374, what they call successful applicants. What we then discovered is that 300 million was only enough for 613 applicants who were successful, and it was leaving out 761 successful applicants. So they were all adjudicated, all approved and deemed successful, but then they decided to only publish a few. So it was only when we started probing how did it happen that firstly you went over budget by approving up to 600 million rands worth of approvals, whereas we only have 300. And remember that 300 is actually 285, because the 15% of that remains with the NAC for administering the same thing. So what did we discover? We discovered that some applicants were granted more than what they had requested. That's what we discovered. We also discovered that the reason why they also went over budget is because there were also companies that applied for more than one project and still got approved. And that where the misallocation comes from is that they applied what was called a guiding figure. National Treasury, when National Treasury gave this money to the NAC, they then said for every job created, you have to allocate 25,000 rands per job. Meaning if Tami Ngubeni had a band and is a principal artist and has booked 6 musicians, at the end of this 45-minute set, you must pay each musician 25,000 rands. Whereas you would have applied for funding based on how much you pay the musicians. Then the NAC says, no, the money that you have requested is too small. Government says you must pay them 25,000. Now, let me use an example. Someone asked for 389,000 rands, gets approved for 1.6 million. Someone asked for about 400,000 rands, gets approved for 2.7 million.
And what do you then call that? Is that not a sign of a misalignment of corruption somewhere along the line? Because clearly the dots here are not connecting from the research that you have found.
The question is correct. They were following a guiding figure. Now, the question they should have said to National Treasury, someone who plays a bass guitar for a 45-minute set does not get paid 25,000 rands when they get off stage. So your guiding figure that you are asking us to use is a wrong guiding figure.
So let me pause there just for a moment and bring Tebogo and Eugene into our conversation. Eugene, let me start with you. You've been hearing Dr. Sithole explaining the dynamics that they find themselves in at the National Arts Council. But from your perspective, from the artist side, what is your response to that, and what do you make of his explanation?
Well, first and foremost, it just suggests or dictates that there's no leadership at NAC. There's a problem at NAC, a serious problem. Both the management and the board, they are malfunctioning. For instance, Dr. Sithole at the moment, who is not even supposed to be talking on this matter because he's one of the beneficiaries, pre-approved beneficiaries before he became the board member. So in becoming a board member, he was supposed to say, I am conflicted on this matter, I cannot talk, because as he talks, he also is talking on behalf of himself as a pre-approved beneficiary of the PSP. He talks about 1,374 applicants, and only half of those 1,374 are standing to benefit because one, they allocated more than what people had applied for. It just doesn't make sense. How do you approve somebody? How do you approve more than what the person has applied? It means that there's no due diligence. There's no corporate governance at NAC currently. It reminds me of what happened with SABC when Advocate Tilma Donzela said, when corporate governance leaves I don't remember exactly the words that she used, but meaning corporate governance has left NAC. And I want to say, over and above the indication of leadership, it shows because all the staff members of NAC went AWOL against people who were artists who were not armed with guns, but questions. So they ran away from answering questions. Only when dragged by the minister into a meeting, they then want to say, we apologize. I want to say, on behalf of everybody who has applied, that did not apply. We are not accepting the apology. It is too late. People have been sitting at the offices, women who should be taking bath and changing their clothes every day, have been sitting there for days, 14 or 15 days now. And that shows that who carry in the leadership of NAC, they must just all step down. Whether you are new or old, when you are new, you take responsibility. Don't run away from responsibility. And it is unfortunate that today Dr. Sithole is taking a different approach of being sympathetic and pathetic to the situation. He was very arrogant in his first appearance at NAC, telling people to take it or leave it, because that is what the reduction of what people have been up. It is clearly a setup for failure. There's no project without full distribution of what they had for, because when government approves anything, it is based on itemized budget. Now, if you say to me, I reduce my budget by 50% or 60% or 70%, you mean that I will give money that you will decide whatever you want to do with it, because I know that you are not going to fulfill the mandate that you have been given to do or assigned to do your project. You will not be able to achieve with that. And it is out of desperation because people have not worked for over now a year and few months.
And so let me, Eugene, at this point bring Tebogo Setatu into the picture. Tebogo, Eugene there at the end was talking about the fate of artists, that many have not worked for a long period of time. As a spokesperson for the United Civil Society in Action, give us the day-to-day realities that artists are facing right now.
Thank you, Tammy. And let's first put the blame on the president for artists not being able to work, not on COVID, because of if the restaurants are open, because of they went to march at the Mahlambandlovu, the union buildings, and the president decided to open. If alcohol setup is open, and but it's part of the entertainment sector, and the industry is still closed, it's got nothing to do with COVID. It's everything to do with the lack of vision. And I think artists, and I'm glad that artists are rising up. And it's about time. And I think that, first of all, Dr. Sipho was supposed to take the responsibility. He spoke about maladministration, misallocation and everything. That is tantamount to corruption. And there's a storm in the NAC. I mean, they keep on suspending, recalling the CEO. It shows that there are things that they need to sort out internally. But let me first also, secondly, maybe thirdly, salute all the artists that have been sitting in there. Sibongile Mngoma, Mzwakhe Mbuli, and Eugene Tetwa himself, we went to the SABC on the prior issues. The fact that the way the budgets were made and how there was a misunderstanding about what an artist earns after leaving the stage, it just shows. It's disappointing that Minister Mtetwa, in his second term and tenure, I think the president has made the biggest mistake of allocating both ministries of sports, arts and culture and heritage to one person. And, this is nothing personal. And when, I also want to salute those artists who say Nathi must go. And I get disappointed when there's so much division. People must understand why people are saying Nathi must go. People don't say Nathi must go because they hate him as an individual. We love Nathi as an individual. But as a minister, he has failed the industry. And the NEC has failed the industry. And I support Mtetwa in saying this Mtetwa, not Nathi Mtetwa, this Mtetwa on Zoom now. saying, the board should step aside. They must go, step aside, take responsibility. And I think Dr. Sipho Stole, I take my head off. He's talking about statistics, but that's academic. We want to see the practicality of industry functioning. And if he's part of this group, he should gracefully step aside, take responsibility for the mess that is upon the NAC.
Yes. Talking about the situation between the National Arts Councils and artists in South Africa who had applied for the President's stimulus package and have not received their funds, allegations of corruptions within the National Arts Council. We have been talking to Eugene Mthethwa and Tebogo Setatu, who both say that Minister Nathi Mthethwa must step aside. Even as in his second term, he hasn't managed to raise the concerns that artists have. And also Dr. Sipho Stole with us in the studio. Now, Dr. Stole, the fact that Eugene Mthethwa says you are literally sitting here, not only as a representative of the National Arts Council, but also as a beneficiary yourself of the very same fund. How does that work?
Okay. It's a good question, and I think we need to then discuss it. I'm here on behalf of the NAC.
You're
not
conflicted.
on behalf of myself.
You are conflicted. You are wearing two hats right now. You are wearing the hat of the NAC, and you're also wearing the hat of a beneficiary.
As I'm here, I'm wearing one hat. So let me then just...
But the practicality and the reality is you are a beneficiary.
Let's talk about why am I here. Okay, I'm here as the council member of the National Arts Council. I head up the communications committee of the council. The issue around the conflict of interest has been discussed. We were the first council members who brought it to the table on the 12th of January when the executive presented us with the PESP. It's on record, you can request it. As a matter of fact, I was the first person to speak, to say, how is it that we come in here as a new council with a 4-year mandate to be told that there is a problem of a PESP program that was supposed to have been finalized 30th of December, which we have been told has been finalized, and you are now bringing it to us because there was an over budget. And if you check the records, we went on to say some of us, remember we are industry practitioners, we come from the sector, applied for this very same relief because we are as equally affected by any other cultural practitioner in the country, and we applied last year.
So before your application, what was your status with the National Arts Council?
We were not even members of the National Arts Council.
You were not a member at the point of application?
We didn't even know we were going to be members. We became members of the National Arts Council on the 1st of January, but we only got inducted on the 12th of January when the CEO who is on suspension said, before we talk about induction, we've got a problem. You know, we can play the record now. Okay, I have a record. We can play the voice record of my input at that very same meeting to say, why do you bring this thing to us? Because we are also applicants of the same thing. Much as we don't have anything to do with the decisions because they have been taken last year already by the 30th of December, but you are asking us to resolve a matter where some of us, and as a matter of fact, there is 5 council members that come from the industry, whose organizations, some work for those organizations, were applicants to the PSP. Now we have to ask yourself, were they not supposed to have applied as citizens, as practitioners? And what happens to remember, they are not the ultimate beneficiaries. The ultimate beneficiaries are the ideas that are being executed on the ground that the money is supposed to go to. Because they are content creators, they are ideas generators. Now we then say, no, you are now a council member. So what we then said, we're not going to be the referee and the player about this matter. We're going to take it to the minister. Minister, we have a problem. Some of us are council members here. We didn't know. We had applied, and we were approved from what we've just been told. What do you say? The minister says, I don't have anything to say. I must take it to the state law advisors. The minister came back to us yesterday and says, I'm going to read you a legal opinion from the state law advisors. I don't think there's any other bigger law advisor above the state law advisor. It read, she said, I'm just going to read it simple. These members were South Africans like any other person. They applied before they became council members. They didn't know they were going to be council members. The decisions were made by the 30th of December, before they came, and they declared on the very first meeting that they sat on, legal opinion, there is no conflict of interest. So this matter is behind us now. We need to talk about how are we going to make sure that every applicant, we fast-track the payment of the applicants, because they need to work on the ground. They've got work that needs to be done. We are not going to entertain the issue of conflict of interest, and people can make their own opinion. The record is there. I can play it for you now of what we said on that day. We declared, and we've been told there is no conflict of interest. We need to go and do our work. We come from the industry.
I think you've answered the conflict of interest issue. What is the fate of the council members that held the seat before the new batch came in? Because as it stands now, and as you can hear from Eugene and Tebogo as well, there is a passing of the buck, and nobody seems to be taking accountability for the corruption or the perceived corruption that has taken place.
We have not taken a view. The matter is being investigated now. We've actually put out a call for proposal to investigate the management, the perceived mismanagement, maladministration of this fund. That is going to take its own course. We don't want to be derailed. Our responsibility now is to make sure that by the 31st of March, every approved applicant has managed to start their project so that they can create jobs to the industry that needs the jobs right now.
So is this a commitment that is being made by the National Arts Council that come the 31st of March, payments will be made out?
That is the commitment. And there was a halt when we started because we blocked it. We stopped. We said, no more payments. You must stop it because right now we need to deal with what is this problem. Until we got to understand that the problem was bigger than what we anticipated, then we came up with a solution, and that is the solution that is being executed now. Payments are being made as of yesterday. Between yesterday and Thursday and Friday, we've paid 7.7 million. We have paid a total of 38 million to over 230 beneficiaries. We have reissued the grant letters. We took the grant letters back. We reissued the grant letters. We recontracted. Out of 1,215 grant letters, we have now received 1,130 people who have said, we are signing, we are ready to go.
Let me bring Eugene back into the conversation. Eugene, you've heard Dr. Sithole there talking about the fact that there is a commitment from the National Arts Council to pay out the monies that they had committed to pay out. Is this a satisfactory action for you?
May I say, don't shy away from addressing me as the president of the Music Industry Council. I'm still the elected president. I know that Maschaba issued a statement that says that China is the president, which is it's an unfortunate statement coming from the department. That
you are the elected president. You are the elected one.
That holds a principle that says no leadership can be taken outside the elective conference. But let me come to the issue of Dr. Sithole. I said clearly that he was pre-approved before his appointment.
And what do you mean by that? What do you mean
Meaning
by
that he was approved before he became a board member. Okay, as an industry person, he had the right to apply and be approved. Now, becoming a board member, he then had to declare. That is why the chairperson is no longer there, because he did not declare. And after declaring, it is not just to declare and then you sit in the meetings. Declaring means that he must recuse himself whenever this issue is discussed, because he has interest in whatever that they discuss. If they take a decision, it also affects his position as a beneficiary. So I think corporate governance needs to be taught in this industry. People don't understand corporate governance.
If you could for one moment, Dr. Sithole, you are rebuffing that. You are saying he's not correct.
Yeah, no, he's not correct. First, let me say, Tam, I've got over 20 years of board experience. I've sat on the airports company board for 9 years. I've sat on one of the first rand companies for 9 years with all the founders of First Rand. For 6 years. I've sat in numerous. If there's one person who knows corporate governance, that's me. That's why I was the first person to speak at that sitting of council, to say we've got an issue here that you need to declare. That was the reason why we don't have the chairperson that had been appointed, why we asked him to step down, because he didn't follow. You recuse yourself if there's an item to discuss Tami Ngubeni and he is conflicted. You recuse yourself. We were tasked with the responsibility of solving the PESP in general, not to discuss individual companies. There's never been a discussion on any individual company since I've been on that council, and I can assure you, all 5 of us who are affected by that, we would have recused ourselves. That is corporate governance.
Tebogo, your input here.
Yes. I think you are fast-forwarding too quickly. Dr. Sithole should be excused because of he's an industry practitioner and he did apply, rightly so. But the minister, you see, we need to be accountable, guys. What went wrong? When the minister was appointing, because he's the one that appoints board members, so he should have checked who are the applicants and then realize that individuals such as Dr. Sithole would have been, if they come on board, then if he appoints them, nevertheless.
Dr. Sithole, we're losing you there for a moment, Tebogo, but before we go for break, Dr. Sithole, did it occur to you at any point to say, now that I'm on the board and I'm going to accept this appointment to be on the board, that I will then forfeit the project that it is that I will be doing, or then allow other artists to be beneficiaries of this?
If the policy demanded so, that's why we said we're not going to be a referee and a player. If the policy then suggested that, we would have accepted that. I would have been so hurt anyway if it happened, because I knew the ultimate beneficiaries on the ground who are waiting for God one day to come.
How many beneficiaries from your project?
104. Hostel dwellers. And by the way, this project, and I shouldn't be discussing that. That's the sad part, because I should not be discussing this project. It's a heritage project. It had nothing to do with the National Arts Council. Heritage was given to National Arts Council because National Heritage Council is under administration. So heritage applicants would have applied to the National Heritage Council if it was not under administration.
Would you recommend that a policy be put in place to mitigate from such circumstances happening in the future? And should a policy of that nature be put in place now, would you be one of those who either recuses yourself from the board, if that is the choice that you make, or hand the project over then to somebody else?
There is a policy already at the National Arts Council about this matter, including the board charter. Even the Act itself says that when you sit in the National Arts Council for the duration of your term, you cannot apply. So those are the sacrifices that we are making, that we know that for as long as we are there, we're not going to apply. And you know what the funny thing that about this sacrifice that you are making, do you know what the honorarium is for sitting at the National Arts Council? It's 2,000 rand. We are not there for the money. We are there because we are passionate about this industry. We are getting an honorarium to sit in those meetings, to try and tackle the serious problem that this industry is facing. For an honorarium, we are not there for the money, and we are prepared for the next one.
Let me pause you just there, Dr. Sithole, for a moment. We'll continue with our conversation in a while, and I'd like us, when we return, to wrap it up and map up a way forward for artists. What is the way forward for artists? Dr. Sithole from the National Arts Council Board with us this evening, as well as Eugene Mteto, who's a musician and still president, as he says, and also spokesperson for the United Civil Society in Action, Tebogo Setatu. Do stay with us for that conclusion. Now, artists have raised concerns regarding the alleged ongoing corruption and maladministration of funds by officials. They've embarked on a sit-in at the offices of the National Arts Council for over 10 days now. The move is prompted by what creatives term is a lack of transparency in the allocation of 300 million rand set aside from the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program. The funds were set aside for the artists in efforts to assist them during the COVID-19 pandemic. We do know that gatherings and live performances came to a standstill. Let's listen in to one of the artists that was at the NAC.
We were even threatened with forced removal a couple of days ago. So, yeah, the sacrifice is real. And it's not easy, but it's got to be done because this has gone on for too long. 27 years later, we're talking about a new South Africa that is even older than the old South Africa, which was apartheid and abuse and violation of human rights left, right and center. But what we are seeing now is not just the violation of human rights, but now it's like a rampant, corrupt system that is unapologetic about the levels of maladministration, corruption, and just disregard for people's well-being. If you had to say we're not happy about what the minister had to say, that would assume that he said something. From where we were all sitting, everyone kept asking, what did the minister say? You know, political speak does not translate very well when you're dealing with people who have real situations like lost homes, lost businesses, lost cars, children who can't go to school, people who don't have food on their table, people who have to constantly beg for electricity and water. And you want to come out and speak political speak, it doesn't translate very well, because people are just, all people want to hear is, so what are you doing about the current situation? Never mind what it sounds like when you're in parliament. Right now we are sleeping here. Right now artists are losing their businesses. Right now artists don't know how to make it from day to day, and you're coming out here saying, you know, particularly regardless of whichever was. Nobody understands what you just said.
Sibongile Mngoma there, who has been a part of the sit-ins at the National Arts Council. Tebogo, as we round off for this evening, what do you make of the address that did finally come from the Minister of Arts and Culture? Are you satisfied that there will be a resolution moving forward regarding this issue?
No, definitely I'm not satisfied. I'm not happy. You know, we've supported the minister. He knows if he wants to take it personal, so be it. But the minister has failed the industry. He's been given so much time, so much chance. He just can't do it. And I think we should bar him from even attending funerals to for the deceased artists, because it doesn't help. I mean, we just need action. We just need a minister who understands that we need to investigate the CMOs, the quality management organizations who actually mismanage royalties in this country for artists. We need to investigate every maladministration, and I'm glad that he didn't apply, because I would be in the mix. He should not have appointed board members that are going to be conflicted because they had applied without having a solution. Going there days after artists have been there for days on end does not help. It's no comfort to no one. So we say, Minister, we love you. And you are my comrade, we grew up together, but I think it's time to separate. Let's take on sports. Let's have an artist lead the artist. We need an artist. Ramaphosa must know, we don't want any politician anymore in the arts and culture and heritage. They just don't understand us.
And the way forward, Eugene?
Well, let me cut it to the chase and say, first and foremost, this situation is a humanitarian call. You see, relief funds are not supposed to be grants that are issued, discretionary grants that are issued, and board must decide. It is a humanitarian call to say that people in this sector are suffering. Everybody is suffering. Whether you're an artist or administrator, you're suffering. Now, the call for reduction doesn't show the caring and the passion that Dr. Sipostolo is talking about, because that reduction means that people must just accept what it is. I wonder if it does apply to his application too. That is why I'm saying the conflict of interest, he doesn't understand it in my position, he understands it from his position, because I'm saying he must recuse himself on all the discussions. After being appointed, he must recuse himself, constantly recuse himself, because whatever decision is taken, it influences even the change on his side. When it comes to the minister, I want to say, let me take you back to the minister's failure to intervene. He doesn't have a courage to deal with issues. He says that he will go and look for money somewhere, but he's not dealing with the people who are unable to manage the money. The Joffreys who were there in the previous board, they're still there, but he's not dealing with that. When it comes to sports, he suspends people, but when it comes to arts and culture, he is dilly-dallying, and that is an unfortunate situation, because we are not going to stay away from or keep away from the message that says it's a clarion call. that we need a different minister. He has overstayed his welcome. He has not been able. It was Generation 16. He intervened. He couldn't come up with a situation. In my situation, he called me and he went to talk to the chairperson, and he never came back to me to say, this is what we have decided. So he's unable. He acts as if he is intervening. He wants to intervene, but it is just ticking the box. And unfortunately, it happens to be my